everyone, and welcome to the Quitcast. My name is Becca Syme. We're doing what is for now the last episode in our character-driven series, and it's not the last character episode we're ever going to do, but specifically in the What Drives This Character episode, this is the last one. The next set of character episodes we're going to do, which will be a while down the road in Quitcast land, are going to be about specific styles of character building, and we'll get to that later. But I just want to introduce this interview that I did with a couple of psychologists who have PhDs in psychology, who also happen to be giant Buffy fans and also happen to be friends of mine. And we did an interview a while ago that was about 2 hours long. And so I'm not going to play you the whole interview, but I do want to do this one segment where we talked a lot about minor character arcs. And essentially, this whole interview was just about the minor characters in Buffy, what we see in them, and it's from a psychological perspective, right? So the goal was sort of to talk about what is beneficial in these characters, what's a good representation of what it's like in real life to have some of these traits, etc. So there's some of that. There's some of just like we are giant Buffy fans and we're just gonna nerd out about Buffy, which was so fun. But I think you're gonna really enjoy this. So we have the full episode on the Patreon. It's free, you don't have to pay for it. We just wanted to house it somewhere else because it is so long. I didn't want to cut anything that we said because it was so amazing. So here's that episode, just that segment. And if you really enjoy this and you want to see the rest of it, please feel free to come over to the Patreon. I'll put a link in the show notes. But just for the sake of closing out the character drive series, I wanted to say we have done individual character traits. We have done arcs. We have done long series changes. We have done short movie arcs, which are more like novel arcs, right? We've done casts of characters. We've done opposing traits. We've done all these things. And what Becca didn't realize when she was putting all of it together is that I didn't theme any of it, so nobody knows where any of it is. So we did a catch-all host on the Patreon, which is also free, that tells you what is in each episode in terms of what the goal of each episode was. So when we eventually do some more character work down the road, maybe this year, maybe not on the Quitcast, we'll do more thematic stuff so people know what's in the episodes. But in particular, in this episode, we're talking about growth arcs of minor characters. And it's really important when you're thinking about what a growth arc should look like, from my perspective, to look at resonance. And so we had this section where we talked about the most resonant growth arcs in these minor characters, and specifically which ones were our favorites. So which ones are our favorites are usually the ones that resonate the most. And because these two are psychologists and they also are very smart people and they also are in love with Buffy, just all of us love Buffy. Whenever we get together, we talk about Buffy. So hopefully this will be helpful whether you like Buffy or not, but the goal is to talk about minor character arcs. So take it away, Tyler, Maggie, and Becca. So just as an introduction to the two people I have on screen with me, my sister Maggie, who I'll let introduce herself professionally in a second, is has a PhD, and through the process of getting her doctorate, met Tyler and found out that we are all giant Buffy fans, like nerdy Buffy fans.
I'm Tyler. In my day job, I am a professor of psychology. I teach at the doctoral level. And I've been very, very close friends with Maggie for quite some time, and obviously have known Becca for a while too through Maggie. Yeah, I took a course in college called Buffy and the Gothic Tradition, where we were looking at, it was mostly British and German Gothic literature, and using different episodes of Buffy as like the sort of foil for discussing common like Gothic horror tropes, and Buffy as Gothic satire. It was super, super cool. And I'm just a huge fan. I've probably watched every single episode like at least 20 times. So
Yeah. Yeah, welcome, Tyler. We're very excited to have you here. So, Maggie, other than being my sister and being the number one individualization person that I
Yes.
always reference when we talk about Indy and the s'mores party on my 40th
Yes.
birthday, that's a very famous story around the BFA. So this is my sister
Buffy
who
themed.
executed that, which was Buffy themed. Oh, I'll have to put pictures. I can
Yes.
put pictures up over the
Slayer
Google.
s'mores. That's what they
Slayer
were called.
s'mores.
Tyler
So
was helpful in, actually, I think the, Hostel 17 was your idea, Tyler,
Yeah,
that
when
was
yeah.
he was in
brilliant.
Hip. For
So
those of you who don't
for
know
those of
Hip,
you who
you'll
have
see
not
it.
heard this
Yeah.
part, it was a potato chip s'mores because it was Spike's Hostel 17 with a chip in his head.
With a chip in his
So brilliant.
Tyler, good work. It
So
was fun, though.
who are you other than my number one individualization sister?
Yes. Yes. I in my day job, I do something adjacent to what Tyler does, but I work in clinical research in a hospital here in Boston, but looking at older adults, dementia and caregiving, and I think that's where we overlapped was we did some training together in the Boston VA. We shared this really huge office with another person who was also really into Buffy, and we just had constant like conversation about it, even in 2010, which was not current to the series, but I remember playing the Buffy game for the first time, the board game, not the video game, but the board game with Tyler, and in various locations that it was brought across the US for us to play. Uh, yeah, and I got into Buffy through Beck, and
Yep.
I didn't watch it like I think you both watched it as it was
When it was
happening,
on.
Yeah.
Yep.
and
Mm.
I did not. I was a late comer to the party. I think probably somewhere around 2005, 2006, 2007, I started watching it. Super reluctant. Rebecca had to like finally broke me
I
down.
was like, you will
Yeah,
love this,
I know.
Maggie.
And then I did. I did. I love it. In fact, I've got like artwork in my dining room that is Buffy
Yeah.
related. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a big part of definitely Tyler and I's relationship too,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
over time, which has been good.
Yeah.
And this actually brings me to one of the things I wanted to say about why I think Buffy was so successful and why so many people who are into psychology love Buffy in particular. Because I think people who are understand psychology know what resonance means in a way that very few people understand on like a really, really deep level. And the way that Buffy storylines resonate, like the way that
Mm,
the thing that you've always wanted to explain to people how hard it is to deal with. And then you watch a Buffy episode and you're like, oh, they nailed that. Like
Mhm.
that thing, not just in the trajectory of the episode, but in the metaphor, like in the
Mhm.
way that they create characters that represent things that are so unique to human experience. I still remember one of the people in the Scooby Gang, right, is Buffy's mom, Joyce. And I
Joyce.
still remember the first time I watched the Body episode where I was like, I've never seen anybody portray grief so spectacularly on television before. Just the way that you can understand what it's like to live inside grief in that way. But what we wanted to focus on today was the arcs of the Scooby Gang, really, and the different things that you might be able to learn as a writer about how to create characters that have a trajectory of some kind. Or we discuss this a little bit ahead of time. What happens if they don't have any trajectory? And can that be equally as meaningful as having a growth arc? So, my first question, and I'm going to include Scooby Gang as pretty much anybody who was at any point ancillary to the Buffy character, minus boyfriends. Who is your favorite Scooby Gang member of all time?
Oh, so easy for me is
I
definitely
Really?
know.
Anya. Anya, hands down.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, how come? Show your work.
I love her sweetness, her genuineness. I think she's like super authentic. She's funny, but like not in this sort of like more juvenile slapstick kind of way that Xander is like the comic relief. As far as character arcs go, I actually really enjoyed sort of the realness of her troubled nature, and kind of
Mm.
coming to terms with like what it means to be human. Um, yeah, I just have such a soft spot for her, and I think she's also very central to like a few of my very, very favorite moments in the series too. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, I she's my favorite, hands down.
So some favorite Anya moments, what are they?
Well, one of my favorite episodes of all time is The Wish, which is her like introduction episode. I love the sort of Elseworlds, the like, you know, Marvel What If comics from when I was a kid, and it feels very akin to that. Just this alternate realities so interesting to me. Really cool character introduction, but I also um, I love. I think the episode is called Helpless, or maybe it's not. But it's in season 7. One of my only like really really good standout episodes in that season. The one that has the flashback to the musical episode where she's singing about how she gets
Yes.
to be
Her and Xander.
Where
right.
she
Yep.
where she gets stabbed in the chest.
And yeah, and like Buffy
Mm.
has to decide whether to kill her or not. Um, it's
Yeah.
just like that's probably like a top 10 episode for me, even though it's
Yeah.
like not one of the ones that carries all the action or
Hmm.
carries like a central plot. I mean, it basically kind of takes sort of a B plot to its like climax in a way.
Mm.
But I love the flashbacks she gets, and some of them are silly, where she's making too many bunnies, and some of them are like just really, really touching. And it's cool to see how she has these quirks that we kind of assume are because she's an ex-demon, but then you learn so much more about her later that she was kind of misunderstood as a human too. I don't know. I just really think she's something special.
That is a really good point about her character arc. I hadn't actually thought about that before because when you see her as in that human in the odd, right, when she does those flashbacks, she does still have the same Anya characteristics.
Yeah.
So it wasn't you've been alive for 1,000 years and you don't know how to be a teenager anymore. It literally is like, no, this is your core kind of personality from when you were human.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was fascinating to
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Mm.
I did not expect that. I expected us to go back in time and see her as sort of like Willow. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
just like a gawky teenager who kind
Yeah.
of that was cool.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
appreciated that consistency too of
Yeah.
her. Like it it felt like her, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that there was an authenticity to it. And she is definitely like one of the things that I love about Anya too is that she has these like semi-poignant insights that just shoot out, because that's who she is. But I like that that's the role that she gets to play, like I like that person maybe because I find myself being that person, but
Mhm.
I liked that part about her too, but yeah, I knew you were gonna pick her.
Yeah. I think like a lot of like little moments too, like in season 4, Xander tells her to dress up as something scary for Halloween, and she wears a big bunny suit, and
Funny.
it's like
Yeah.
it's this recurring gag, but they don't even really like talk about it. And then it's
Mhm.
like after you've watched the show for so long, and then you're rewatching it, you pick up on all these like little things. Like in the season finale for season 5, she like sees a bunny or something, and she's like, "Oh, that's a bad omen. We're gonna die," or whatever,
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
It's here.
Yeah,
It's here.
yeah. And then I think too, like you were speaking about the body earlier, like, such a powerful episode, but interestingly to me, like the reaction that always like hits me the hardest is Anya's,
Yeah.
Mm.
because again, it feels the most like raw, the most authentic, like she's really grappling with like there's no rule book to like how to grieve, and it's not as simple as like now we do X. And because it can't really be studied and she's sort of trying to learn how to be human, she's like so totally off the rails.
Yeah.
But it's like there's something so much more real about that, because
Yeah.
as humans, when we grieve, like we're trying to place ourselves in a very specific box to like contain our emotions, and she's like, what are you all doing?
Yeah.
I don't understand this at all. And
Yeah.
so that, I think, was always like one of my
Mm,
favorite Anya moments too.
mhm,
Yeah, I agree. That was the most honest, I think, portrayal of what it's like to be in the middle of just giant grief, right?
Yeah.
Which is w- why are we doing all of this? What does it all mean? Why is this happening? How can we not just, why can't we just change this? Right? Especially because it seems like so much of life is changeable for them, right? Like because they have access to magic. Like, why
Yeah.
is this not?
yeah,
And nobody answers her. I think that's
Yeah.
the other piece that's
mm,
really, really interesting about just in terms of character consistency. I have to say one thing too, because Tyler brought this up, and this is one of the things I love the most about the way they wrote these characters is the role that these people would actually play in real life. They play in the show. I don't mean the actors. I mean someone like Anya, who's having a hard time understanding how to be human. She gets the roles in those scenes where it's like, why are we doing these things? This is
Yeah.
dumb. Like, you
mm,
people, what's wrong with you? And she constantly does that. And it is so consistent ever since you introduce her, which I love. It tells me that the people who are in the writers room understand human behavior, like on
Mhm.
a level that is just beyond what I think most shows have had before, even beyond what Angel has. Like, for sure that it's
mm,
not the same from Buffy to Angel.
Mhm.
But that Anya is one of the examples that I always give. Oz is another one, about how if you write a character that you would just know how they would act in any situation, that's because they wrote them like a real person. They
Mhm.
weren't a stock character. Like, you all know someone like Oz or like Anya or like Xander or like Willow or Buffy. And the people that you know act just like they act as well. And that's what makes them resonate so much and be such good kind of tools for understanding human behavior.
Mhm.
mm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Maggie, who's your favorite Scooby Gang member?
I think my favorite's probably nixed by the boyfriend rule, which is Spike. But
You can, I will allow it because he wasn't always a boyfriend.
I did I did enjoy thoroughly all of Spike, throughout all of it, into Angel, like, he just like, the anytime I can extend my time with him, I will, but I really I liked his brazenness. I loved the British accent, I'm not gonna lie, but I also like, he had the comic relief that I wanted for Xander, which was good. Like, he had all of the characteristics of like a relief guy, take this on and out of all of the room, but like, he was built really well, and he felt more authentic, and he didn't feel as shallow, potentially, which I'm sure we'll talk about Xander, but like, he had a lot more going on too, right? And maybe it was because he had this backstory and things like that, but like, they did that on purpose, clearly,
Mhm.
because they
Yep.
built him up. But then I just I can't not love a Spike when he comes on. I don't care what he's doing, but like, he had it all inside him. But like, the dry humor, like, comic relief that I was aching for to get rid of, like the Xander part, probably endeared him even more to me. And I like that like, everybody at one point hated him.
Yes.
And then many people turned around, but
Yeah.
not everybody, but like, no one ended up being like, oh, this guy at the very, very end. It was like, he was such a controversial character too.
Mhm.
It was fun. He was
So, favorite
a good
Spike
one.
moment then, well, or moments.
Oh
You can have more
boy.
than one, but
One.
okay, tell me.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
My favorite, well, what I would say probably this might even be my very, very favorite episode, is from season 5, Fool for Love, where Spike gets his flashbacks to when he killed the 2 prior slayers
Yeah.
and uses
Yes.
that as, like, the, way of
Fake date with
teaching
Buffy.
Buffy how
Mhm.
she could meet her end, but
Mhm.
as far as, like, what you're talking about, Maggie, like, the depth of his character, I think, is
Mhm.
so engaging, like, and I love this idea that, like, his sort of fatal flaw is his, like, softness,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
as a vampire, he's, like, fighting against that so much, that
Yeah.
nature, like, the human core of him is this, like, the bloody is the bleeding heart. It's
Yeah.
the weepy writing poetry, falling in love so hard,
Ah, dude.
obsessiveness, and
Yeah.
then you sort of turn that on its head to this sort of predatory male in the vampire role, but
Mm.
underneath it is still this like mama's boy, who falls for the girl
William.
that won't
Yeah.
even pay him any attention, and
Yeah.
I just think
Yeah.
it's adorable.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I on a different note, I really like I can't remember the name of the episode, but you know the one in when they have Thanksgiving at Giles's house and he's
Oh, yeah, yeah.
babysitting
Dang.
Spike. And it's so great.
Yeah.
He has so many great lines in that
So many great
episode
lines.
and just like
Where they shoot him in the leg with the arrow and he's like moving
yeah.
out of the way.
Yeah.
That one, it's, like, also, like, kind of in that weird up there, like, maybe not my favorite episodes, but, like, in the, like, vein of, I love the Halloween episodes, they're quirky, like, I love the Thanksgiving episode, and for Spike, for that reason, that was a good one.
Yeah, Spike, it's interesting too because there are very few characters who are complicated enough in that show that they have what I would consider to be like multiple arcs, right?
Mm,
Where different parts of their personality start and end. Because, of course, in real life, no one is just one thing. Like, no one is just like um archetypally, right? No one is just the savior, no one is just the crusader, no one is just the helper, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is a whole bunch of different things and is really complicated, but in fiction we usually don't have room for that because you
Mhm.
don't spend enough time with a character to be able to make them complicated. And I think this is where a lot of, to talk about individualization writers really struggle because the tendency is to want to write characters that are so complex, and you can't usually do that in like a novel, for instance. You have to really be able to get a beginning, middle, end, and kind of show us these different arcs of the way that their personality traits work. Because each individual personality trait, if you're going to change it, it requires almost like a roller coaster of change. So if
hmm,
you think about the way that, say, Willow grew, or Xander, or Giles, or Tara, because we saw that a significant amount of them, you
mhm,
see these episodes that are almost whole episodes that contain a part of their trajectory of growth.
Mhm.
And I talked in the Buffy episode about Xander's, the two Xanders, right?
mhm.
Which was one of the big turning points in Xander's arc, where he decided he was going to try to be the adult, and then he failed at being the adult, right? But in order to get there, you had to first see Zeppo,
Yep,
Mhm.
Zeppo.
was the episode all about him where he was like the zero kid,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
not the hero, right? And then
Mhm.
he ended up, kind of sort of saving the day, but in like an accidental way, right? Which was
Very
hilarious.
Xander.
It's so Xander, but you have to show those arcs in a way
Mm,
that is like, it starts somewhere, it progresses, and then you have a try fail on their part.
mm,
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's not going to feel like it completes. You can't just show us this and then show us the difference. It's not going to feel like it actually progresses. You have to see multiple points. And if it's going to be believable, you have to see it shown in behavior in multiple different ways. So
Mhm.
the reason Xander's character is so hotly debated, right, in terms of like the people who are like Xander should be the everyman best friend, and then he ends up being the one that 15 years later we all hate and we're all like,
Mhm.
this guy is an idiot. Because I think we get the perspective of being able to watch what he did and didn't end up doing in reality in that
Mhm.
show. But if you're going to write a fiction arc, you have to have enough space to develop really complicated characters. And Spike had so much screen time, and we saw him and like both of you have said, like we saw the flashbacks of who he was,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
then we saw the progress inside of like just one episode, and then that added to what we knew about him and it allowed us to have complexity. So he was one of the most well-developed characters, I think, whereas somebody like Willow had a little more narrow, like her development was a little more narrow because she often showed up as Buffy's sidekick and
Mhm.
Mhm.
not as a person on her own. So Tyler,
You
what did
can't
you
raise your
think of
hand.
how Anya ended? Like, what did you think of the way her arc ended?
I understand kind of the idea
Mm.
of it is she's kind of seeking her redemption. And I think that to me it feels like the messaging is like you have to pay the price for all of the mistakes that you made.
Mm.
And she kind of knows that. And so she accepts her fate. I mean, she knows there's no chance for her to survive this battle.
Yeah. She's not a demon anymore, right? She doesn't have any
Mm.
powers.
Yeah, I understood it. It still just like kills me. I also think like this just the sort of uselessness of her death and the sort of no consequence of it uh just really sucked for me. And also like I will say I'm such a huge fan. I've read like the majority of the comic books as well, and like a lot of the characters return even if they're done in canon through the show. Some of them still make a reappearance in the comics, and it's been a while since I've read them, so I hopefully I'm not misspeaking and all the fans will come for me. But I the I don't remember her making like a return in the comics either, which like also I get it. Like
Mm.
we don't have to like retcon everything just because we love the
Mhm.
characters, but
Yeah.
it definitely was like a really hard one for me. I understood what they were going for, and
Yeah.
I think it made a certain amount of logical sense, but I just like emotionally that one was tough for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The This was one of the only deaths that I felt like it wasn't what should have happened.
Hmm.
Because to me, it felt like they said, everybody thinks Andrew's going to die because he's the useless one. So what can we do that will surprise everyone? We can kill
Ah.
Anya.
Yeah,
Right. It did not feel like it had a story reason to
Mm.
happen because when we saw her die, and by that I mean like when she was stabbed in the chest and they
yeah,
turned her away from being a demon, she was really a human again, where it
yeah,
felt sort of like she had gotten the thing that she wanted in getting to the altar, because that was what she felt was the
Mhm.
pinnacle. And she kind of had that transformation moment of realizing, wait a minute, this isn't all there is, by going through the vengeance demon thing again. And I felt like what they could have done with her character, if they hadn't had two shows to babysit,
Yeah.
was they could have shown an actualized growth arc of
yeah,
hers post Xander that would have
yeah,
been
Mhm.
beneficial, instead of feeling like, "Oh, we don't have time to babysit Anya's character in
yeah,
season 7, so we're just gonna shack her back up with Xander again."
yeah.
And it
Mhm.
felt like it really deflated all of this amazing arcing that they had done with her character, and then basically turned her into a prop for the
Yeah.
last like 3 quarters of season 7, which really bugged me about her because there was some stuff that they could have done if they hadn't been so busy with two shows, I think.
I think too, like the busy with trying to build to like the big climax.
Yeah.
Like I think season 7, they over indexed on like this is an action show and we
Yep.
want it to be like a
Yeah.
huge ending. And I think this is like a common criticism I feel and see for season 7 is like it sort of forgot what made the show special, which was the
Yes.
characters. And
Yep.
Yeah.
especially coming off of season 6, which was like really about kind of breaking down some of our core characters to the things about themselves that they don't love
Yep.
and really making them come closest to connecting to their like pathetic sides.
Yeah.
We didn't
I
really
agree.
get the chance to sit with them, and particularly the side characters like Anya. We didn't get the chance to like. We had that one episode, and that's part of why it's one of my favorites. To hear about like what she's going through, but it
Yeah.
really, I agree with you, was sort of like we had all these people go through these terrible things, these challenging things, and then we sort of just kept it off screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like Willow, when she's like coming to terms with Tara's death and the guilt that she feels for being with Kennedy, like it happens off screen.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a tragedy to me because
I
Yeah.
like
agree.
she's not a bad actress by any
No.
means. But, Kennedy, but 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 it's like this is what the audience is owed, like the
Hmm.
connection to the emotional side of what they're going through, and they just
Yeah.
sort of were like, we don't have time for that because there's more potential slayers coming and more powerful vampires, and that's the interesting thing. And I think
Yes.
they misjudged what the audience was hoping to see.
Wanted.
1,000%. I agree. I could not agree more with that. And especially because what they set us up for, it felt like they pulled a Game of Thrones, right?
Mm.
Where it
Yeah.
was like we had this amazing tapestry. Have you ever seen the meme about like the first 6 seasons of Game of Thrones and then season 7?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's a picture, beautifully drawn, illustrated picture of a horse on one side,
I
and
see.
then like a stick figure horse on the
Yeah.
right side. That's how I feel about the first 6 seasons of Buffy and then season 7 of Buffy.
Yeah.
I feel like we had this, and this is maybe the part that always frustrated me the most about, yeah, we got Angel. And I do actually think that season 5 of Angel got back to the things that we loved about
Mhm.
Buffy
Yeah.
and took an opportunity that I wish that Buffy had gotten,
Mhm.
to really explore the fullness of all the metaphor and symbolism and richness that could have happened in the resonance, because they set up some of the best arcs like
Mhm.
ever in the 6 episodes or the 6 seasons previous, and then they just deflated the whole
Yeah.
balloon.
Yep.
And it's interesting, I hadn't heard anybody say that about the action, but it makes sense now seeing what Joss has gone on to do,
Yeah.
that that's also part of, I think, his own feeling of feeling a little bit boxed in by all of this individualization stuff that happened in Buffy,
Mm.
the most
Yeah.
individualization show ever, by the way. But I don't think it was him. And this is really important to me. I don't attribute the genius of Buffy's metaphor to him necessarily. I think it was the magic of that room. I think it
Hmm.
was
Yeah.
everybody who was present, because he has not gone on to write the kind of character arcs that we saw him. Everybody always talks about what a genius he is, and I'm not saying he's not good at what he does. I'm saying I think that the richness of that was in the fact that they all sat around and workshopped that and
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about it and wanted it to be excellent, had the time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
Maggie,
Yep.
what did you think about Spike's end, both his end in the Buffy show
Oh boy.
and also his end in Angel?
His end in Buffy. I mean, I had the same sort of reaction to Seven, having watched them, like back to back on streaming, which must have been different, than in person. But I had the same like dissatisfied reaction to the season itself. So that probably was like, well, and like they're all gonna do this and that. But actually did like what happened to Spike.
Yeah.
I could be like a lone wolf here. I don't know, but I did like it. I liked that he was sort of like the Jesus, if you will, at the end, that
Yep.
was like, I'm gonna sacrifice myself fine, like this selfless act, which is very mixed to anti-Spike in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Maybe something that was like not fully expected of him to be able to have the capacity to do, which I
Mhm.
loved because I was
Except
like,
let me just say, in the same vein as the Anya's the same as the human as she was, you know what I mean? Like she's the same
Mhm.
person. Spike as a human, it feels like a little bit the vampire part of him or the soullessness part of him,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
Anya didn't have, right? She still had her soul, which was what made her her. And
Mhm.
when Spike got his soul back, he got his what I would call his lost soul archetype back.
Yeah,
So he
like that
got back,
William.
yes,
Yep.
the bloody self back a little bit when he
Yeah.
got his soul back. And interestingly, one of the hyper characteristics of lost soul characters is martyrdom.
Mhm.
So, like, even though I didn't expect him to do it, when I look back and I see, like, oh, this makes perfect sense to
Mhm.
who they set him up with, it's always those like Romeo characters
Yeah.
who are
Mhm.
like, my heart bleeds for you. And then they actually make themselves like
Yeah.
impale themselves on a sword,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
We're
satisfied.
happy and happy to see him again in Angel,
I
obviously.
was. I
Yeah.
was happy to see him again in Angel, and I was happy to see Spike, right? Like, I mean, certainly some of the circumstances changed, some of the things that he did changed, but I did like that same old kind of feel of Spike back, and it made it, I think, better for me in Angel than, yeah, I think there were times in Angel where I started to be like, this is losing me. But I think he really helped reel it back for me a bit. You know, some of those sprinkling ins of the old characters and
Mhm.
the sense of this is the same old. And I honestly, I can't believe this, but I don't even remember what happened to him in the end of Angel. Isn't that bad? Like,
They
I don't
all
even
just
remember
sort of
what happened.
vaguely die.
Like,
Like,
fade away.
The,
Like,
yeah,
the
oh,
like story just sort of stops. Like they're
yeah,
about to fight everything, and then it just
boom. Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
cool.
Like
Let's
cut
run
to
into
black.
the fight.
Hmm.
Like Wesley is already. I think Wesley is already dead,
Wesley's
but
dead. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
he in the comics he like is that's like immediately retconned, and he's a ghost,
Yeah. Of course.
and Gunn is also retconned, and he's a vampire.
Okay.
Oh,
Um,
All
yeah,
right.
so it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I
yeah,
mean,
I did like that
you liked
Spike
it.
was back and that he was Spike, like
Yeah. They
that
also
was a
took a good
plus.
like big brother, little brother kind of like
Yeah.
They
dynamic
really did.
too. I feel like,
Yep.
again, this is like the way that we connect to like Spike's sense of humor that's like not
Mhm.
so jarring. It's like not over the top. It's like he can
Yeah.
get under Angel's skin in like a very specific way
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
entertaining without, being ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then having Harmony there, I think, is like a foil for
Oh yeah.
Spike's
That
humor.
was so great.
I mean,
Yeah.
she's another like hilarious side character.
She is.
Yeah.
That becomes even better, right?
Yeah.
In
Yes.
Angel. Yeah.
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 She got a good arc. It's interesting too because the whether we can tell a person's arc is satisfactory or not is did they get what they wanted?
Mhm.
Right,
Mhm.
so, like, in a sense, Spike got what he wanted, like, from if you take his actual human history into account and
Mhm.
not his beginning in the show, what he wanted was that woman who loved him unconditionally,
Yeah.
right, which you saw in that last scene with Buffy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Even though he didn't think she was in love with him, she was. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Mhm.
as much as
Yeah.
she was capable in that moment when she was still the chosen one,
Yeah.
which is one of the things I talked about in her episode. She never had a chance to be in an equal partnership with a guy ever because she was always the chosen one. So they were always gonna get deprioritized to her calling every time. And when that went away, she finally had a chance to have that, and then Spike was gone, right? Because he's
Yeah.
dead, but he got what he wanted. Anya did not. So I don't think her arc was satisfying. I think that's part of why we didn't like it. Xander
What do you
did.
think Anya wanted? I'm curious.
So I mean, it depends on if you believe what they showed us in her history.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think she wanted to understand human beings. I
Mhm.
really
Mm.
think that's what her goal was. And
Mhm.
the type of person that she was fascinated by trying to understand how to do it right, like
Mhm.
how to do whatever it was that we were doing. And the way she did that was by watching everybody around her,
Mhm.
which is a really common for like the particular type of person that she was. So when you have that, like, I need to know how to do this right and how to be right, the goal isn't actually rightness for her, it's understanding. Because once she
Mm,
fully understands the like picture of humanity, and I think a lot of people who are misunderstood as children who get into psychology or into personality tests and stuff like that. So a lot of the people who are going to watch this video who've had like nobody knew me when I was a kid and now I'm really into Enneagram or strengths or something as an adult, right? It's like they're gonna feel more understood by somebody like Anya
Mhm.
because that's gonna
mhm,
feel to them a little bit more resonant. But yeah, I don't actually think she wanted to do it right because she wouldn't have learned that doing it right wasn't fulfilling
Mhm.
if that was actually her goal. And that's why I think she ended up having a dissatisfying arc because she didn't end up learning anything.
mm,
It's interesting, like, listening to you say it, I can totally see that, and it makes a lot of sense that that would be her goal, her arc. But I think, like, in a vacuum, like, without listening to you explain your perspective, like, I might have assumed that her, like, goal or arc, um, was a bit more literally what they were trying to tell us it was,
Yeah.
which
Yep.
was like, I want to kind of figure out who I am when I'm not who I am because of something else or someone
Yep.
else. And
mhm,
so kind of like,
Yep.
that was what they were trying to shoehorn as her story, particularly in the last two seasons. And then, so maybe that is their attempt to make this ending more satisfying for her, because it's like I'm fighting because, not because I'm here to support Xander or because it's Buffy's cause, but because, like, now I'm choosing to be human and I'm feeling that this to me feels like the right thing to do. uh, which I think is their attempt to make that a satisfying ending. But again, like, this might be that disconnect where it's like they're telling us that that's what it is, but I'm not connecting to it, and that's why
yeah,
I'm like always feeling sad by it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But that's why I don't think that was her actual arc, right?
Right.
Was because
Mm,
if it was, then we would have felt satisfied when she
yeah,
died because she did that.
Yeah.
Like it would have
yep,
felt like, oh,
mhm,
the way we feel satisfied by Spike's death.
yeah,
Like,
it,
oh, Spike
yeah,
died. Not, but it wasn't because it was for love. So if I could imagine an arc, let's say if that was the arc of like I got to figure out who I am apart from these people, they would have taken her into more of like let's say vengeance isn't doing it for me, right? I'm going to become what I was always meant to be. And there
Right.
would have been some
mhm,
kind of hidden, almost like talent that she had
Yeah.
because of this curiosity and this
Yeah.
understanding desire that she had, where like she would have turned into um, a profiler for the FBI or
Yeah.
something like
yeah,
Yeah.
that, right? Like
yeah,
to me, that would have been the ultimate kind of um, exposition. But with her, it feels sort of like what we saw in her character over the course of the arc was that her primary desire was just to understand.
Yeah.
So I think if
mhm,
that had been actually fulfilled, she would have understood herself
Yeah.
definitely and
Totally.
yeah,
what she wanted. But this is why in that so the archetype is called the waif.
mm,
And interestingly, in waif archetypes, they desire connection so much. Like they want to be connected to other people, but it really is to understand the peace that they have in themselves. That is like, that's their actualized self, right? Is sort of, I have all peace within me and I contain all peace because I know exactly who I am and I know who you are and right.
mm,
Um, interdependence.
Hmm.
But she never got there
Hmm.
because they arrested her arc with death, right? Basically, like her arc should have continued. Andrew should have died. I'm sorry. He should have died.
Yeah.
And Anya should have continued into the comics or into Angel, frankly.
Yeah.
She would have been fine in
That would have been
Angel.
great.
That would have been
Needed
awesome.
her like continued redemption, which is
Yes.
like very much the
Yeah.
like sort of whole story theme of the Angel spin-off
Angel.
was like
Yep.
Absolutely.
characters who needed to like pick themselves up off the floor. That's like
Yep.
why Faith did like some of her growing on that show
Yep.
Mhm.
instead of on Buffy, because like that's not necessarily like the overarching theme of like the whole Buffy show.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I really think we nailed this too about why when some writers try to end their books and they end them in ways that feel like plot relevant, it was really cool, but for some reason people don't like it for the character,
Mhm.
right? It's always because you showed us something that you didn't fulfill for us.
Yeah.
So you showed
Mhm.
us this longing that they have for something that you were not aware was there. And then whatever the arc is that they finish in, the way I always describe this for like arc veracity is it's like a house. If I walk into a house and it's missing a wall, I don't feel safe in that house.
Mm,
So I instinctively know this is not a house I want to stay in. I need to get out of here unless I'm like doing an adventure or something, right? But if I want to live there, I'm not going to walk in, see a wall missing, and be like, yes, let's buy this house. That's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
mhm.
I don't consciously think about my security in that house as being what's wrong. I think the wall's missing. Right? But that kind of cueing happens with all kinds of stuff. It happens
Mhm.
sometimes with having arches instead of square doors. It happens with the colors. People walk into a house and they're like, "Oh, I don't like this. I don't want to buy this house. I don't want to live here." But they can't always tell us why. And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to know enough about architecture to be able to understand why people don't want to be in that house. You may
Mhm.
think you've described or written a completely secure, safe house with four walls that's beautifully decorated. But when the readers walk into it, they're like, this is not
Yeah.
cool. Like, I don't like it in here.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
then you have Tyler with Anya's ending, right? It's like,
Yeah.
let's rewrite this ending, right?
Fanfic Anya.
Yes, like
That's
fanfic
Tyler's
Yeah.
next
Anya's
endeavor.
last, but like her whole last seventh season would have to get rewritten because they
Mhm.
also tried to machinate that, knowing where they were going by
Yeah.
giving you all this external stuff that didn't actually address her internal. And when you
Yeah.
have a resonant show like the first six seasons of Buffy,
Yep.
you have a bunch of arcs that match internal and external veracity, like the house matches.
Mhm.
Sometime, if you ever get a chance, I always use this when I'm teaching trope architecture. Just Google upside down Adele face. Like, just
I
Google.
saw this online the other day.
Hmm.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Maybe like 24
Now
hours
I
ago.
need to.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, Maggie, just really quickly Google upside down Adele face.
I promise you, Maggie is going to know exactly this because this is a cognitive psychology phenomenon.
Yep. Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
We've seen these
definitely.
before, probably just not with
Yeah.
Adele.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you know when you look at it, it looks fine, quote
Yeah.
unquote fine. But when you actually look at the face the right side up, it feels gross because you're like, this is not how faces should look.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's how readers feel. They feel like the upside down Adele face. When you do something that doesn't resonate, it doesn't arc end. And this is why I just beg writers, please, to listen to your editors when they tell you that something is not working. It isn't always not working for the reasons they say. You may have to figure something else out. But if they don't feel the resonance of the internal and external, they are going to not feel secure inside that house. And feeling secure in the house is one of the ways we keep people in the house, right? Is they have resonance. But um,
Mhm.
side note, I totally agree about Anya being one of the best Scoobies just for the reason alone of she's so consistent. Like she just is herself all the time. And I think that's really amazing. I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I absolutely adore the two of them. And there is a good chance that we are going to do another podcast at some point, just the three of us. That's not necessarily for writers, but is for Buffy fans. So if you want to know more about that, please make sure that you subscribe to my newsletter because I will be announcing that if we do it. I don't know that I'll announce it on this channel because it's not really for writers. But hopefully you heard us talk a little bit about this. We are all so excited about the arcs and the metaphor and symbolism in these episodes and what the capacity of a writer's room has to offer, in particular when you're looking at how to craft arcs and how to craft resonance. So writing in community is so important. And obviously, as a high connectedness person, that is what I think is the best to do. I think that we often do our best when we are collaborating with other people. So I'm excited to collaborate with the two of them again. We had so much fun. So do keep an eye on my newsletter and on the Patreon for more information about that. But we'll set up a separate channel. It won't be on here. So if any of you are not Buffy fans, you don't have to worry about it. But I hope that you have enjoyed this. Any of the character drive episodes that we've done, I'll put a link to the Patreon post in the show notes so you can get a sense for what the other episodes were like. But we're going to move on to some skills development stuff, to some question the premise stuff. And I hope that will be helpful for you. So please tune in next week on the Quitcast. All right. Bye, everybody.